everyone, this is Eric Warnicki here with Compose Music Now. For this video, what I decided to do was host my own composition contest. I've always really liked this romantic notion of the composer-performer, the idea of Bach or Beethoven or Mozart or Chopin or Liszt sitting and writing out their own piece on sheet music and then actually playing it on their pianoforte. That whole idea is extremely exciting to me, and I wanted to get more of that out there in the universe. So I'm a member of a subreddit on Reddit which is called /r composer, and I thought that was just the perfect place to try this experiment of this contest, and ultimately I ended up posting what you see right here. So the R Composer December 2021 Composition and Performance Contest. And so what I did was I took $200 of my own money and said that I'm going to award that to 3 different composers that write the best piece. So first prize is going to be $100. Second prize will be $66, and then third prize will be $34. So the rules were as follows. It had to be a brand new composition, and it had to be performed live on video. Your composition has to be melancholy and reflective. The piece could be for any instrument or combination of instruments, and the piece needed a score accompanying it. The performance needed to be completely natural. It couldn't have any synthesized or computerized elements like programmed drums or programmed piano. It all needed to be performed live on a real instrument. So we're going to judge the winner by how strongly the piece evokes the feelings of melancholy and reflectiveness, how emotionally moving the piece is, how original the composition is, how technically proficient the composition is, how well the composer performs the piece that they've written. And the most important thing of all that's going to count more than every single one of those other things is how beautiful the piece is. So let's take a look at the 7 people that entered the competition and start listening to their pieces and dissecting them, analyzing them, and figuring out which 3 are the best. So let's get started. All right, so right here is our list of 7 entries, and we're going to start with the very first one that came in. This was by msanjelpie, and the piece was called If You Only Knew, and it's for solo piano. We'll pull up the sheet music here, and a couple interesting things about this right off the bat. In the key of B minor, which you can tell from the 2 sharps there, and the tempo, adagio, very slow, 60 mm, which is Melzel's metronome. We've got this interesting 8th note pattern here on the left hand, which seems to start off with 5ths and then moves up to a 6th, and then a 7th down to the 6th. So we've got this interesting moving, kind of rocking bass pattern to start with. And then on the right hand, we start off with this rest, which is an 8th note rest, and then our 3 regular quarter notes, and then a tied 8th note at the end there, which is the same length as your quarter note there. So that's a pattern that we're going to start with here, just a little bit of delay on the right hand there. So let's see how that sounds, and we'll just follow this and follow along through it and listen. And if I see anything interesting, I'll call it out and just analyze things as I see them, point out interesting things, give my thoughts. But if you're interested in listening to any of these compositions without my interruption, I'm going to link to every video down below so that you can listen to them uninterrupted if you want to. And so with that, let's hit play and let's get started. Thirds now, instead of single notes. There's nice fermatas here, indicating a change to a new part, slightly faster. Nice non-diatonic chord there. And these are dyads here on the right hand, 2-note chords. Another fermata to end a section here. Left hand's got the treble clef in it now. Ritardando to slow it down, and then a fermata at the end. Seems to be kind of a compositional thing here. Left hand is switching back to the bass clef here for this largo section. Interesting thing is every chord in this section seems to be a rolled chord or an arpeggiated chord, which sounds really nice. Another fermata at the end of a section. Nice. Back to Adagio. Interesting. Beautiful. I love the fingerings over it. It makes it very easy to understand. Nice fermata there again. Now, new section, a little faster now. Another fermata. Same repeat of the pattern from the very beginning. Yep. Stylistic fermata. Back to Adagio. Back to 3/4 time. Fermata. I like these voices here. Yeah. Extremely nice. Extremely nice. There's an obvious style here. You know, there seems to be this, you know, here's a pattern, here's an idea, here's a phrase, and then let's add a fermata here just to think on it, just dwell on it for a minute and just really let that sink in. There's some interesting changes in here as well. I love the use of the dyads in there throughout the whole thing, the rolled chords, and towards the end there ends up being some interesting changes in it. So in the beginning it's very heavy on these eighth notes and quarter notes, but towards the end you get these really interesting 16th, 32nd notes that come in here. Overall, just an extremely nice piece. I think it really fits the mood of what we're going for here, reflective and melancholy, extremely well. You know, it's almost like a march, like sort of a slow march through the mud of despair in a certain regards. And so I think that this is awesome. This piece really demonstrates a lot of skill. There's a lot of interesting techniques in here. There's this mordant, this upper mordant right here, which is like a, you know, doo-doo-doo. Got obviously a lot of fermatas throughout it, our rolled chords, our arpeggiated chords. In some ways, the phrasing in this and the use of the fermatas and the ritardandos at the end of each passage is a little bit like the myth of Sisyphus in a way, you know, doomed to push a boulder up a hill each day and then, oh, come crashing down. You have to start over again at the end of each day. It's a little bit like that in a certain regard, you know. It's got an iconic nature to it, which I really like. I also enjoy, just for playability, that there's fingering throughout almost everything in here, and so not a lot is left up to chance. And now I'll just get to a couple of things that I didn't like as much. I won't try to be too hard on it, but I do think that there's an overuse of the fermata and the ritardando at the end of each phrase. I think that it would have been nice to have seen a couple of phrases maybe done differently. There are a couple of things that I think are a little bit strange, like right here. You have this one underneath this beam right here, and it probably should be over it just for readability. Could be slightly confusing. There's a couple of places right here where the rolled chord, the arpeggiated symbol right here is actually touching either a stem or a note head to the left of it, and that could be confusing as well, just to kind of clean that up a little bit and make sure that none of the accidentals or none of the symbols are touching any of the notes or the stems or the beams or anything, just to improve the readability. There's something weird going on here where it looks like one of the fingerings is overlapping, and so I can't tell what that is right there. So that's my thoughts on this piece. Extremely nice. I just think maybe a little bit too much over-reliance on the fermatas, but maybe a couple more interesting variations in techniques or in rhythm would have improved this ever so slightly. So that's my feedback on this one. Overall, extremely nice, and we're off to a really great, I think, brilliant beginning to this contest. Okay, so now we're going to listen to the second entry in the contest. That is by GKCaS, and the piece is called Finger Puppets. So let's pull up the YouTube video and the score here. So Finger Puppets, to being content, even just for a little while. So we've got a tempo of 105 with rubato. Rubato meaning the performer has a little bit of leeway to determine the exact tempo. You can speed up or slow down a little bit. It's more open to the interpretation of the performer or the conductor. So let's see, the key signature that we've got here is 2 flats, and so that's going to be G minor, which is the relative minor of B flat major. We're starting on the left hand with kind of a similar arpeggiated 8th note pattern here. And then in the second measure, it starts with the first 4 8th notes in the left hand for switching over to the right hand. So I can see a little bit of trading off that'll be happening on this between the left and the right hand. And so I'm instantly seeing something that's a little bit different with this one compared to the previous piece, which is the use of different voices here. And then we also have the use of hairpins or crescendos and decrescendos happening in this. And so a little bit of different techniques coming in on this piece. So let's start to play it, and we'll go through it. And again, just like the last one, I'll just comment on anything interesting that I see as we go through the piece. Moody. Ooh, nice, very clashy, I like this. It's the pedal stop there. Getting louder. Nice tenuto there. You see it writes crescendo right here, because this is a longer crescendo going all the way up to here. Tardando, new section, going back to the original tempo. Some slurs, yeah. Another technique that's new to this piece is these slurs. I like that, the 3/4 to 4/4. Na, 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 na. Might have put a subito before this P. The change from a fortissimo to piano right there probably required a subito, a sudden change. Oops. Very dramatic. Definitely some new techniques introduced in here. I think the use of the tenutos in here really actually makes a difference in this piece. And then the different voices that get thrown in here is really nice. And I think in general, there's a great sense of melody in this piece. It really flows like water, you know, do-do-do-do-do-do-do. And the left hand doing the arpeggios throughout the whole thing, I think just really makes this a lot more songy. It's got more of a pop sensibility to it, which is a good thing. I come from that world of songwriting and pop, and I think that this is a beautiful song that sounds like it could very easily have lyrics attached to it. Now for a couple thoughts in here. There are some things that are a little bit tough to see here. Like you can see that this tie right here that carries over from the previous measure kind of goes over this line right here in the staff, which in this case is the G line right here. It's almost completely over it, kind of making it a little bit harder to see. I might have liked that to just be a little bit lower right here, sort of in the middle between this E and G line to improve the legibility and have it not just be right up on this courtesy accidental right here to remind you, you know, this is a B natural instead of a B flat. So the legibility right here of this is a little bit compromised because of that. And so let's go through a couple other things. I mentioned here between measures 59 and 60 that we have this fortissimo going straight into a piano in the next section. You can see the double bar here indicating a new section. A subito right there would have been nice, just as a reminder to the performer, you know, ooh, a sudden change in dynamics is happening right there. Okay, one thing I just noticed here is on measure 60, we've got this key change right here, switching from G minor into D minor. And it could possibly be missed by someone. So maybe it might be a good idea to use sort of the traditional practice of adding a courtesy accidental here in this key change, just to remind everyone that this E right here is now an E natural instead of an E flat, although not necessary, of course, in contemporary practice. One thing I thought was really interesting was measure 108 here, where you have this oops, and I wondered a little bit about what this was. Then I realized that it's a tiny mistake in the performance, where you have this eighth note here going into this half note here. You played it a little bit earlier, so you kind of treated this as just a regular half without the two dots, and then popped this in here, I guess, as a quarter note and then another quarter note or something like that. So I just played those notes a little bit earlier. So not a big deal, but I appreciate that you called that out just so I could know what was going on there. Okay, so final thoughts. You know, it reminds me a lot of Eric Satie or like some of the lighter Chopin type of stuff. Really a beautiful piece, but maybe a little bit too happy for what we're going for. I'm not really sure how well this piece captures the feelings of melancholy and reflectiveness, but an extremely nice piece. And next up, we have the song Clouds of Tears by Nicholas Vasson. This is 1 minute and 52 seconds long, so let's pull it up here and let's see what we got. So this piece right here, Clouds of Tears, is interesting. This is actually written for a solo erhu, and the erhu is a Chinese instrument. It's similar to a violin, but it only has 2 strings. And the bow for the erhu is actually made in such a way so that the horsehairs, you know, the strings of the bow are actually put between these 2 strings of the erhu. And so you can't remove the bow from the erhu without taking the strings totally off. It's just stuck there between them. And so you're moving your bow and either playing the string on the left or playing the string on the right, or bending it to be able to play a chord like a dyad on this. And so it's a very interesting instrument. So this piece definitely gets points for originality, for sure. So he's got that going. So let's listen to it and see how well it captures the feelings of reflectiveness and melancholy. Extremely beautiful instrument. It really does have that singing quality that a violin is known for. And that's something that you can get with just about any stringed instrument. But in this one in particular, really it does kind of have a crying, weepy feel to it. And it seems to have this sort of vibrato or this expressiveness to it that really it gets you right in the soul. So let's look at a few things here and see if we can get some interesting tidbits out of this sheet music here. Clouds of Tears. So the song starts in the key of E minor, which you can see here from the 1 sharp on the F line. And of course that's the relative minor of G major. So we start with this nice crescendo right here. And a lot of nice slurs added in here, really precise on what he wants for the bowing in here. But I see really just a lot of play, on the eighth notes, quarter notes, half notes, dotted quarter notes right here. So relatively a simple melody here in the beginning and rhythms. And then at measure 9, you can see that we're actually switching here from the key of E minor to the key of A minor. And then things start getting a little bit more interesting because we start getting these 16th notes off of these dotted 8th notes right here. I think that one of the things that's really nice about this is that he's really letting the instrument speak for itself. He's letting the voice of the instrument really tell the story here. There's a certain thing that stringed instruments are able to achieve that, piano instruments or percussion instruments just can't achieve. Like a greater range of dynamics in these glissandos going from one note to another as you can just slide your finger, across the fretless neck on this. I was a little bit confused actually on this 24th measure about whether this right here was a hairpin, like a decrescendo on this final note, or just an accent mark because it was so small. Maybe that possibly could have been extended if it is a decrescendo to this next note here on the 25th measure, this dotted half note, just to make it more clear that this actually is obviously a decrescendo as opposed to an accent mark. Another thing I noticed here is that there's a rest here on this measure. This is the 28th measure, and it didn't actually sound like that rest was being honored in the recording. It sounded like this was basically just a dotted quarter note right here that was actually performed. But definitely it's a beautiful piece. It definitely makes me feel a lot, and it does stir up kind of a feeling of maybe something being lost when I listen to it. I can imagine sort of this journey of having to leave your home or something like that and listening to it. It's very evocative, and so I'm definitely going to give it points for that, and it's just a beautiful instrument to hear in general. It's definitely new for me. But overall, I think this is extremely wonderful. I think that the ability to be able to play an instrument like this is really amazing in and of itself, and I am really impressed by this piece. So it's a really great job on this one. Okay, so the next piece that we have is by DetromJoe, and it's called Autumn Afternoon. That's 1 minute and 8 seconds long. So let's just take a peek at the sheet music here before we get started. So we start very slowly in that adagio kind of tempo, 65 beats a minute. We're in the key of F minor here. You can tell we've got the 4 flats right here. We're going to start off nice and quiet, kind of a do-do-do-do-do-do-do. Something like that. We're going to kind of repeat that, going up a little bit to start with, and then going higher for introducing some non-diatonicism right here. So then we have a new section here, which again takes us into the key of E minor. This is very much written in sonata form. And so in sonata form, you have like an exposition, which is what we have at the beginning here. So an introduction of the musical idea. And then again, you have a development section where you take the idea and you start playing around with it, building upon it, doing different things with it. And then finally, at the end, after the development section, you have this recapitulation section where you take what you've already introduced in the beginning and through the development section and the exposition section, and you come back to it. Just a really nice way of tying the whole piece together. It makes it sound wonderful. So I think this one's going to be really nice. Let's give it a play and let's listen to it and check out the sheet music while we're listening to it. section. Nice, very jazzy. Ooh. I like it. You know, it almost sounds like the Peanuts a little bit. Some kind of Charlie Brown thing. In a good way, though. That ending. Wow. Definitely a great song. Like I said, I feel like I can imagine listening to this on a Charlie Brown movie or something like that, where maybe Snoopy runs away and he's just moping around waiting for Snoopy to come back. The song's called Autumn Afternoon, and I certainly agree with that. One of the things about autumn when I was a kid is, you know, you didn't want to go back to school, and so in the last couple of weeks of August, you know, you'd be a little bit sad, just not wanting it to end, to go back to school, and it does kind of have that feeling to it. I wouldn't say that it's melancholy, but I would say that this is reflective, and maybe it is sort of a certain kind of melancholy, but I do think that it's wonderful. It's a wonderful sounding piece. I couldn't see anything in the engraving right here that I can critique on it at all. I think that everything is extremely clear and notated really, really well. Maybe there was a couple pieces in here where you lifted up the pedal, you know, and the sound went, you know, from the pedal being pressed to dry again and being pressed again, which I think was in this little section right here on the 19th and 20th measures right here where it wasn't indicated. So maybe that would have been nice to have some indication about what's going on with the pedals, but overall a really, really nice piece right here, and I think extremely coherent and extremely well put together. So wonderful, wonderful job on this one. So this next piece that we have here is called Saffron Ocean, and it's by O_D1, OD1. So let's just take a look at the score here, and then we'll play it. So the time signature here is cut time, also known as a la breve, which is the same thing as 2/2 for the time signature. So normal common time, which is 4/4, would be, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4. Your a la breve or cut time is going to be cut in half, so 2 half notes instead of 4 quarter notes. 1, 2, 1, 2. So interesting choice there, just indicating what the pulses should be. Indication here at the bottom or con pedal, which really is just saying use the pedal however you like in here. You can see he even says use imagination in here. So the pedal is completely up to your imagination. So very rubato here, very open to your interpretation of how fast you think that this should be. So this one is again in the key of B minor, which I think one of the earlier songs was in. So we're starting off with our B natural, and then an F sharp. So that right there is the 1st and the 5th of the B minor chord to start here. So we're starting off on 5ths. And then you can see actually that we go down a whole step, and so that's actually parallel 5ths. So this wouldn't necessarily fly as far as strict counterpoint writing, but we know that's not what this is right there. So on the 13th measure here, halfway through it, we have this new section, our meno moso, which means basically just play a little bit slower. So we slow things down here a little bit from our starting approximate rubato tempo of 120. On this 15th measure, we're in another section where we're now at 80 beats a minute, and we've actually switched now to common time instead of our cut time, the a la breve that we talked about before. So we've got these nice arpeggiated figures here on the left hand, and then this busy little melody here on the right hand. So then at the end of this 18th measure here, we have this crescendo going into a forte. So previously we were mezzo forte into forte. And then finally, at the end of this section here, we have this symbol right here, which is a caesura. So this is just a pause right here, a silent pause in the middle of music from the world of poetry. So then we have adagio, which is slow. So even slower than the previous tempo, so we're slowing down even more here. And then immediately we have this tempo primo marking, which means go back to the previous tempo that you were at before the previous change. And then this right here is definitely going to be confusing to anyone looking at it. So we have a key change right in the middle of this measure with only one chord left in the measure. I absolutely would have just put in the accidentals to the left of this chord and then saved this big key change right here. for the end of this measure and started it on the next measure. I think that this does nothing but add confusion to have this in here like this. So we've got our fermata, and then another clef change right here, and then the caesura and the key change right here in the middle of this. Way too much going on right here at the end of this for an average person to be able to read. So I would clean that up just a little bit. And then we've got another key change here on the 33rd measure. So we're going from the key of D sharp minor to now D minor, so a half step down. So that will be interesting to hear how that sounds. So this section is looking pretty interesting. The left hand is doing this 8th note pattern right here, rocking back and forth, and then the right hand is doing the do-do-do. So this looks to be kind of a call and answer sort of thing. And then we have yet another key change here on the 52nd measure. So this time we are in C sharp minor. And so you may have remembered that we were in D sharp, and then D, and now C sharp. So each time he's going down a half step when he changes the key here. So let's see if we end up in C minor in a little bit on this song. We'll keep a lookout for that. Definitely going to get points for the key changes on this. And then right here on the 65th measure, you can see we have this tempo marking here, lento. So lento is very slow, even slower than adagio. And then we have our coda right here. So sort of a dun dun. Dun dun. This is how I imagine that this will be. So now that we have spent so much time talking about it, let's actually listen to it and follow through it, and I'll give a couple more thoughts at the end. You know, there's that rubato, really open to interpretation on the tempo there. Sort of Zelda-esque with that run right there. I like it. A little bit slower. Beautiful. That's a little too far left. Ba-dum-bum. Ba-dum-bum. And this section, new key. Yeah. It's cool. I mean, it's cool. It works. And then our big build-up. So yeah, some thoughts on that. Really wonderful, wonderful song. I think it moves and it flows a lot. You know, similar to the name of the song, it's called Saffron Ocean, and I really think it does quite feel like an ocean, sort of an unsteady ocean in a certain regard. I also think that a lot of the melodies and a lot of the phrasings on this is something that I would never do. I think the playing style here is really unique and very true to the composer on this. The do-do-doom, do-doom, do-doom, do-do-doom, doom. Some of that I think is really cool and really beautiful. The rubato that was mentioned at the beginning, the very rubato, is extremely true. There were definitely liberties taken with the performance in here where parts were, you know, crescendoed and played faster and played slower, and notes were held longer, or rubatos were put in there that weren't indicated. And so it's definitely good to put it in there to indicate that. This song is very free and open to the interpretation of how you're feeling. Is the piece melancholy and reflective? I think in a certain regards it is, but in another regard, there's also a lot of hope and joy in here too. Not trying to ding it, but I don't feel very depressed when I listen to it. I almost feel energized. It's an interesting piece and a beautiful piece, and I think a very put together and consistent piece as well. I definitely would clean up some parts of the score to improve some of the clarity for anyone that wants to perform it. But overall, an extremely nice piece that I think took a huge amount of talent to put together, and I really loved listening to it. All right, so only 2 pieces left. We actually made it through almost all of them. So let's pull up the next piece here. This piece is called Moskvoretskaya 2012. So I actually looked this up, and Moskvoretskaya is actually the name of a street in the city of Moscow in Russia on what's called the Moskva River, which I had no idea. But this is a street in Moscow with a really cool floating bridge over it where people can walk over this floating bridge and see out onto the river. And it looks really cool. So let's go ahead and pull up the piece. Now this one is in the key of F minor again, and this one's in common time as well, 80 beats per minute, and he indicates that it's melancholic. Pretty interesting use here of these triplets right here, using the quarter note as the first 2 notes in the 8th note triplet right here. Got a 5-tuplet here, a pretty complicated melody in here already. I can tell this is going to be a little bit more advanced as well. And then here on the 10th measure at the end, he indicates a cantabile. So this right here is supposed to be more legato, more smooth flowing between the notes than the previous 9 bars were. So there's a bit of a pattern emerging here, which is our triplets and then our 5 tuplets right here. But the left hand is changing up, you know, going from half notes right here, getting very complicated here, and then simplifying again on the 11th measure right here, and just going into these nice arpeggios right here, these 8th note arpeggios. And then you can see right here in this second voice right here on the 16th measure, you have these half notes on the second half of this measure that continues over into the 17th measure. And this tie right here is going right through these note heads on the other voice. That definitely should be avoided if possible. I can see a little bit of a recapitulation of what we had at the intro with these triplets and then this 5-tuplet here at the end of this section. And so I do think that this definitely is a recapitulation, and everything before with these big arpeggios that you were doing in the left hand is a development section. So it'll be interesting to see how this all wraps up at the end with sort of the final culmination of this triplet 5-tuplet pattern that was going on throughout the whole song. So it'll be interesting to hear this one being performed and see it. Definitely a complicated piece, definitely a lot going on musically on this one. So I'm excited to listen to this one and see what we've got. So let's go back to the top here and let's hit play. I heard a grace note there. Nice. Very nice. New section. Nice. Dum 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 bum 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 bum. This part was played a couple measures before this actually started. So really, really, really wonderful, actually. I am surprised at how much I loved that. I think that shows a lot of experience, and I hear Tchaikovsky in there, and it's really got this Russian feel to me. And like I was saying when looking at the score before even listening to it, the play between these triplets and these 5 tuplets is really iconic to me. I'm actually surprised at how much I love that. I don't know if I would call it melancholy and reflective. I almost feel like this piece is angry and combative and fighting against some kind of oppression, against some sort of force that intends to do you harm. And in some ways, I really, really love that. I really, really do. I think that this was a wonderful piece. It was restrained, it was held back, but it was masterful in some ways. I think a lot of things about this piece are really wonderful, and it makes me want to hear it a whole bunch of times. Dun, 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 dun. I think that this was big, it was epic, it sounded nationalistic, and it was challenging as well. I know for a fact that I would have a very difficult time being able to do this with all those different voices in there and being able to make sense of it all. So I'm impressed by this one. A couple thoughts that I have is it would have perhaps been nice to have a bit more sections that actually got into the forte and fortissimo range. It was definitely more on the quiet side, and I felt like it was raring to go to start some massive hammering, but it's great the way that it is. Really great music here, so fantastic job. And our final piece of the contest is called Assimilation, Disintegration by saintlysinner. So let's pull this one up and the score, and let's have a listen to it and see what we think of this one. So this one's for solo piano and starts off adagio, which is slow. It actually starts off with a time signature of 6/4, and then the next measure is 1/4, and then 5/8, and then back to 6/4. And so I see a pattern popping up here with the rhythm switching between these 3 time signatures, potentially over and over again, and I'll scroll through just a little bit, and yep, it seems like the whole piece is going to switch between these time signatures until the very end when it introduces a 6/16 time signature. Wow, going into 6/4 and then finally ending on the 1/4. So wow, So definitely this is going to be the most interesting piece as far as the time signature goes. Let's just make sense of this for a quick second. So 6 quarter notes. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1 quarter note, 1. 5 eighth notes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one's going to be interesting for sure. Starts off nice and quiet, and this one's in the key of A minor to start with, but I see plenty of non-diatonicism thrown out throughout this one. So right off the bat, this one's going to be difficult to wrap my head around because we've got a G sharp and a G natural on the left hand in the same chord. And in standard harmony, you can't have more than one note with the same letter. So it's going to be a little bit difficult on this one to figure it out. So my best guess of how to analyze this would be to say that this first chord right here is in the G sharp harmonic minor scale. So instead of having the F sharp for the 7th, it's going to be raised a half step to regular G. This is a G sharp diminished 7 without the 3rd. So it's a super weird dissonant chord to start with. This right here on measure 6, there's so many ledger lines here in this bass that it's going to be difficult for some people to be able to read this. So I would actually move this up an octave and then put an octave indicator on there. So an 8 dB, just indicating this is supposed to be an octave lower. I think that, and possibly even doing the same here for the next measure, would help with legibility just a little bit. Then on this 19th measure, we have these diamond note heads right here, which means in this case just play extremely lightly on the right hand and then really heavy on the left hand with these accented notes where the fortissimo is there. So extremely quiet, soft on the right hand, and then donk, donk, donk. That'll be interesting to see how this ending turns out right there. It seems like it'll be interesting. Okay, let's give a listen to this one and see what we think. And we'll go through the sheet music together, and I'll just call out things as I'm listening. Ooh, that's spicy. Like that. Wow. It's dramatic is what it is. It's extremely dramatic. And I have to say, I actually feel threatened by this. I feel like I'm on board the Nostromo with an alien wandering around the ship about to get me. It's actually very menacing. I feel like like my heart's beating when I listen to this one, and, and like I'm breaking out into a cold sweat. Is it melancholy? I don't know. I think it's like tense, actually. Is it reflective? Definitely. So I think this is like the scariest of all the submissions. And I also think it's like the most avant-garde and the most playful in certain ways. The time signature changes throughout the whole piece to make the whole thing feel really tense, so like you never know exactly what's about to come next. And so it's got this cinematic quality that I don't think any of the other pieces achieved. And so I have to say I really enjoy that. And I think that this one had the strongest use of dynamics. You know, I like when you go very quiet to very loud. And there's not a lot of lukewarm temperatures in between, not a lot of mezzo fortes or not a lot of mezzo pianos. They certainly were in there, but I think that the switches from, you know, piano, pianissimo to forte, fortissimo, and even pianissimo was very interesting and very cool. And I have to give this one credit for being so inventive with the time signatures. Really great piece, and I think an exciting way to end this. So let's go and just do a quick recap, and then let's announce the 3 winners of the contest.
2 hours later.
So, after having listened to each composition one more time, I decided to give a score for the 6 criteria that we're judging each composition on. And I have to say it was extremely close for each of them, the 1 point difference for most of these. But at the end of the day, we have 3 winners. In first place, we have Saffron Ocean by OD1. This was a wonderful, wonderful piece, a wonderful performance. And I really feel, even though all of them were extremely great, this one just edged it out by just a little bit. A fantastic piece of music. And in second place, we have Autumn Afternoon by DetromJoe. I just loved it so much. The feeling that I get of watching a Peanuts movie while listening to this just really took me back to a place in my childhood. And this one was fantastic at evoking those feelings of melancholy and reflectiveness for sure. Just a great piece. And finally, in third place, we've got Moskvoretskaya 2012 by Numbers and Music. That was a wonderful, wonderful experimental piece. Even though it wasn't the most melancholy piece out there, the originality and the inventiveness of this piece was able to edge it out just past a couple of the others. So I absolutely want to say thank you to everyone that participated. All 7 pieces that got submitted were fantastic. This contest went way better than I ever imagined that it could. I'm just amazed listening to all of them and getting to see these performances. It's so cool to see composers writing their own work and performing it live. It's one of the coolest things ever, and it's just great that I got to be a part of this and kind of got to put this positive energy out there into the universe. And so I'm very excited to do more of these in the future. So I just want to give big props and big congratulations on wonderful pieces written by msanjelpie, GKCaS, Nicholas Vasson, and saintlysinner, our 4 runners-up. All the pieces were so close, and I think that all of them are so fantastic. So I just really want to say thank you and congratulations to all of you guys. You guys are absolutely fantastic composers and wonderful performers, and I'm really, really glad that I got to listen to your pieces. So I want to say congratulations to our 3 winners. You guys are awesome. OD1, DetromJoe, Numbers and Music. I'm going to reach out to you guys and find out how to send you your money. I want to say thank you to the other 4 entries. All of you are amazing composers, and it's been an honor to get to listen to your pieces and analyze them. And I really want to thank all of you for entering. I want to also thank the moderators of Our Composer on Reddit for their help in organizing everything, setting everything up, getting eyeballs on it. You guys are fantastic, and I really appreciate you. And I want to thank you for checking out my channel, Compose Music Now. If you liked this video and you want to see more things like this, consider subscribing, leaving a like, leaving a comment. Those kinds of things will encourage me to keep making videos and doing more contests like this and analyzing more young composers' work. It's really an honor to get to do this kind of thing, to make this kind of content, and hopefully you think that this is something that's unique and we can keep making things like this and analyzing more types of videos, learning more types of things, and learning things together. So this is Eric with Compose Music Now. I want to thank you for checking out the video, and I will see you next time.